Welcome to Family Cooking Class with Beaverton City Library. My name's Bethany, and we'll get started in just a minute while we wait for people to join in from the meeting room. Thanks for coming. Class. My name is Bethany. I'm with the Beaverton City Library. We are going to be recording this session, so we're going to hit record in just a moment. The only thing that will be recorded is me, and we'll put this up on our YouTube channel in a little after the program, but you won't be on the screen. Even if your camera's on, it's just recording me, so don't worry about being on screen. Today we're going to be making 3 dishes, and if you got the recipes, you'll know what we're making. You can either follow along with me as I do things, or you can just watch and like a cooking show you see on TV, but a little more amateur. And then we will be making some dishes together. So the first thing that we are going to be making is some chili. Oh, and I'll mention I'm in the studios at Open Signal PDX. So if you want to do your own cooking show at some point because you're so inspired, you can do that if you live in Portland, and that's where I am today. So this is a little bit different than my home kitchen. So if we have any hiccups, that's on me because I'm cooking in a place I'm not used to. But we'll go ahead and get started. We're going to be making some chili first. And I really like chili because it's very customizable. So if you have picky eaters in your household, you can put stuff in or take stuff out that they don't like. And you can make this pretty healthy, and there's a lot of different ways you can serve it with different toppings and putting it over things and things like that. So we're going to be making the recipe that I gave you, but feel free to customize it for your family's preferences. So I am going to be cooking in this here. It's the knockoff version of an Instant Pot. And if you don't have one of these, you can make it in a pan on the stove. I'm just using this because we don't have a stove here. So that's what we'll be doing with this. So, and you can check an Instant Pot out from the Beaverton City Library if you want to. So feel free to take some notes about how this thing works, and then you can try it at home. So I'm going to be starting with the Instant Pot on saute mode, and hopefully the beeping isn't too loud. And we'll go ahead. So I'm cooking it on saute, and this is where we're going to be cooking our onions and garlic and carrots and things like that. So that's what I'm starting with here. So I'm just going to add a little bit of oil, about a tablespoon of oil in the Instant Pot, and then we'll cut up our vegetables, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to first cut up an onion, and hopefully I don't cry too much while I do this, because I usually do. So I rinsed off this onion before I got started, and I'm just going to kind of peel off the skin here. And I've got a little container over here. If you got the kit, you'll see that there's a recipe in there for vegetable stock, so you can save your like onion skins and carrot peelings and stuff like that for vegetable stock, or you can always put it in your compost if you have compost at your home. So to cut up this onion, I just cut off part of it. My family doesn't really like onions, so I don't put a ton of onions and things. And the way I've learned how to cut is actually from the Food Network. So, so I cut off a slice of the onion here, and then I'm just going to make some horizontal cuts across. So we've got like layers here, and then I'm going to cut the other way. So we cut across this way, and then we'll cut this way into slices, but not all the way through, so it kind of stays intact, so it's easier to keep it together while you're cutting. So just do some cutting here. My eyes are already tearing up, so this might be unpleasant to watch after a while, but we'll try to get through this really quickly. I've heard it helps if you have a sharp knife, so that's probably part of my problem. So if you have a sharp knife at home, maybe the onion doesn't affect you this way. Okay, so I've got some diced onion. I'm putting the extra into my little compost bin for later. And we've got our pan that's heated up, so I'm just going to add in our onions, and you can hear they start sauteing right away. And I'm just going to keep an eye on those so they don't burn. Whew, like my eyes. I've got a carrot here, so you can put carrot into your chili if you want to. I found it's a good way to get in some extra vegetables. This one I put in the refrigerator after I washed it, and it turned this really scary color. So we're just gonna peel the carrot. Usually if I'm cooking it like this, I won't peel it first just because it's unnecessary. So I just kind of give it a scrub with a vegetable brush. But since it looks so scary right now, I'm gonna go ahead and peel it. All right, so when I cut the carrot, I just kind of cut down the middle like this. I'll cut off the ends. And then I'll just kind of cut the long way. If you have the flat part of the carrot against the cutting board, that makes it more stable. And then make sure when you're cutting, you just kind of have your hand that's holding the food with your fingers kind of tucked under like this. So that way you don't cut your fingers off. We don't want that. And I just kind of cut down like this. That beeping is telling us that the Instant Pot is heated up for our sauteing. So I'm putting in our diced carrot, and I'm just gonna give that a stir. And I've got a little salt in here. I'm just gonna add a tiny bit of salt, kind of layering the flavors and drawing out some of the moisture. All right, and next we are going to cut up 2 cloves of garlic. So I've got a bulb of garlic here. And so I just kind of pulled off 1 clove of the garlic. And then to get the skin off, the easiest way to do it is to put it down on your cutting board, like with the flat part down, and then put your knife flat on top like this, and use the heel of your hand to kind of give it a smash. And then the peel starts to come off like that. So I took the skin off, and I just have my clove of garlic. I'm gonna cut off this little root end here, and then cut it into small bits. Or if you don't want to mess with garlic, you can buy a jar of pre-minced garlic, and then nothing smells like garlic. It's not as potent, and I'm sure a purist would tell you that that's not the way to go, but in all honesty, we usually buy a jar of pre-minced garlic and just scoop some out of there. So I'm gonna do my other clove, so I'm just placing it flat down on my cutting board, giving it a good smash. The skin starts to come off, and then you just use your fingers to peel the rest of it off. Stir this so it doesn't burn. Right, cut off the little root end there. And while I'm mincing this, I'll just say, if you have any questions, we're gonna have a question and answer portion at the end. So if you have any questions, you can type them into the chat, and we'll try to get those answered at the end, or maybe I'll answer it along the way. All right, I'm gonna add my garlic in. I usually like to wait until the other stuff has been cooking for a little while, because once you add the garlic, you really have to keep an eye on it because you do not want it to burn. Because burnt garlic tastes terrible, and if you burn garlic, you just have to like throw it away and start over. You don't want to eat burnt garlic. All right, so our stuff is sauteing here, and we are going to get ready with our spices. So I have chili powder here, so you can buy chili seasoning in a packet, or you can just make your own, and it's a lot cheaper to buy like the spices and just combine your own, but that's another option. I usually buy my spices out of the bulk bins at Winco, or at least the ones that I use a lot of, and then I just refill my jars. So this is chili powder that I got out of the bulk bin at Winco, or if you want to buy just a jar of it, these are $1 at Fred Meyer, and you get 2.25 ounces, so you get plenty to make several batches. All right, so our recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of chili powder, which really seems like a lot, but that's what gives it the chili-like flavor that you know and love. All right, so our mixture has been sauteing, and if you can see here, we've got our onions, and they're kind of translucent and they're a little brown around the edges, and that's what you want them to look like. That way they're not crunchy, because people who don't like onions usually don't like raw onions because they have a really strong taste. But once they've sauteed and softened, they have a milder flavor and not quite as unappealing to people who don't like that. So I'm just gonna clear off some of this garlic stuff, put it into my little bin there, and then I'm going to add my spices. So you want 2 tablespoons of chili powder. So I've got my measuring spoon here. We've got 1 tablespoon and 2 tablespoons. And there are different varying degrees of heat on chili powder, so you can get like a mild chili powder and then it won't be too spicy. Or if you like spicy stuff, you can get the spicy stuff. And then we also want 1.5 teaspoons of cumin. So I've got my cumin here. It's the ground cumin, not the seeds. And I've got a teaspoon and a half. And I'm just gonna stir those into our sauteed onions, carrot, and garlic, and let that saute for a minute. That's kind of toasts the spices and makes it, gives them some good flavor. And then we'll add a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and a 1/2 teaspoon of ground black pepper. So I'm gonna add my salt here and some pepper. I've got fancy pepper grinder here. I don't know how much comes out with each grind, so I just do it for a while and hope for the best. All right, now we've got our spices in here, and if you're doing this at home, you could just start adding the other ingredients, like if you're doing it on the stovetop, but since I'm using this, I'm actually going to hit stop to stop it from being in saute mode, and then we're gonna add our other ingredients, and then we'll put it to cook. So I'm going to add my tomato sauce. If you like chunks of tomatoes, you can also add like diced tomatoes. My family doesn't like chunks of tomatoes, so that's why I'm not adding it. And then I'm also adding some water. So I just kind of pour it in the pan and swirl it around so we get the rest of our tomatoey goodness here. I'm just going to add that into our pan. All right, so that's our tomato sauce. And then we're also going to add some beans. I have kidney beans here. You can also use black beans, or if you don't like beans, don't put beans in at all. So usually with canned beans, they've got this thick liquid, so you might want to drain that and rinse the beans off so they don't have that starchy liquid on them. I drained mine and left them in the can, so that's what we're doing there. All right, so we've got everything mixed together. If you're doing it on the stovetop, you just kind of let it come to a light boil. You don't want to like boiling so hard it's like boiling out the top, but just so you know it's cooking. And then you put and then turn it down to simmer. You can put a lid on it and then just let it cook. The longer it cooks, the better it tastes, but realistically, we don't want to let it cook for hours because we want to eat. So you can do it anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour, or if you have a slow cooker, like a crock pot, you can also put it in there. All right, so with my cooker here, it's like a pressure cooker, Instant Pot type thing. I've got it set on the locked mode, and then this has some different presets, so I'm gonna try it with that. And there's one called beans and chili, so we're gonna try that. So I'll do beans and chili on, and then it said 11 minutes, and that's what the cookbook that it came with said to put it on, so that's what we're going with. So now what it's doing, I'll just kind of turn it around so you can see it here. So we put it to beans and chili mode, and now this thing here, and I don't know how it looks on the Instant Pot that we have at the library. This is like a different brand, but now it's heating up, and it's a pressure cooker, so it's coming to pressure. So we might hear a little bit of a steaming as it's coming to pressure. All right, and now that we have our chili cooking, we are going to go on to our cornbread. So I'm going to move some of this stuff out of the way. So this is for my vegetable stock for later. I'm just putting it in this container here. And I'm going to put a lid on it so my eyes stop watering from the onion. All right. We are going to get started with our cornbread. So I have a mixing bowl here, and I've got my recipe. And this is a really simple recipe for cornbread, but it's pretty tasty. So I've got my flour and my cornmeal here, and I need some measuring cups. So the first ingredient is 1 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. All right. I did have a little scoop for my flour because it's best to scoop it into the measuring cup rather than using the measuring cup to be your scoop, because sometimes then you get too much flour or whatever in your measuring cup, and then it kind of throws off your recipe. I don't know what happened to my measuring cup, so we're just going to dump it in here. So we've got 1 cup measurement here. All right, close enough. And 1/4 cup flour. That's probably too much. This is where you need a scoop. All right, so we've got our flour in there. And next, we are going to add 1 cup of yellow cornmeal. So I had a hard time finding cornmeal at Fred Meyer for some reason. All they had was this. It was a little bit pricey, but I measured it out. So this recipe calls for a cup of cornmeal, and this had about 7.5 cups of cornmeal in here. So really you could make 7 batches of cornbread with this one box. I did find cornmeal in a 5-pound bag at Safeway that was less than this box. So this box only has 2 pounds. So they might have it at Winco too, but that one's a little further away, so I don't go there very often. I did like how it came in a paper bag though. All right, so we're going to add a cup of yellow cornmeal, and I'll just show you what this cornmeal looks like, because there's sometimes like different kinds to choose from. And this one is a little finer ground. So you can also get like polenta, and you don't want that. You want this that's kind of like a more flour-like texture. So we're going to add our cornmeal. And next we're going to add a 1/2 cup of sugar. This seems like a lot. The original recipe that I looked at called for 2/3 of a cup, but I thought that seemed like too much. So I went with a 1/2 cup, and if you don't like it as sweet, you can add less sugar than that, and it won't affect the recipe too much. All right, so I have my sugar, and then we'll need 1 teaspoon of salt. And a tablespoon of baking powder. So most of you are probably pretty familiar with baking powder. Baking powder and baking soda, not the same thing. They're not interchangeable, so make sure you use baking powder. All right, so I have a tablespoon of baking powder. This is the leavening. This is what will make it rise. So it doesn't have yeast. It's like a quick bread, so we add baking powder. And now we've got our mixture here, and I'm just going to use my tiny whisk to mix it up until everything is combined. So this is a good step for kids to help with. All right, and we've got all of our dry ingredients, and next we'll add our wet ingredients. So we need oil and milk. So I've got our oil here, and normally I would measure this with like a glass measuring cup, but the glass measuring cup was a casualty of this cooking show, and it met its demise. So I'm just going to use our little plastic cups and estimate. So we know that 1/3 of a cup is less than 1/2 a cup, so I'm just going to estimate here and hope that I'm close by. And then we'll add our milk. So I have some soy milk here. You can also use almond milk, or if you drink dairy milk, you can use that as well. And we want 1 1/4 cups, which seems like a lot, but that is the correct amount. So here's a 1/2 cup, another 1/2 cup, and 1/4 of a cup. And here's another part that the kids can help with. We need to mix this until it's well combined. So giving it a good mix here, because we definitely don't want any like dry lumps of flour in our cornbread or baking powder. It does not taste good. So make sure you mix this up until there are no lumps left in there. Get down to the bottom. All right, I think that looks good. And then So you can use an 8x8 pan and you can grease it, or you can make muffins. You can make it into muffins. You just might have to adjust your cooking time if you're making muffins as opposed to like a whole pan of them, because they'll just cook for a different amount of time. So usually at home I'll use that nonstick spray, but today I'm just going to use a little bit of oil. And then I've got a bit of paper towel here, and I'm just going to spread the oil around so it's coating the bottom and the sides of the pan. Okay. I think that looks pretty good. And then we'll add our batter. This over here. When you watch a cooking show on TV, they always like leave a bunch of stuff in there, and that kind of drives me crazy. And I know they're doing it for time's sake, but I don't like wasting things, and also I have to wash these dishes myself, so I try to get everything out of the pan. All right. So we've got our batter in the pan, and then we would just put that into the oven that's been preheated to 400 degrees and bake it for 20 to 25 minutes, or until a toothpick inserted into the center comes out clean. So if you've baked before, you've probably done the toothpick trick. So basically, when your like muffins or cake, you want to test if it's done, you can insert a toothpick into the center, and then most of the time, unless the recipe specifies otherwise, you want to stick it into the center and have it come out clean. Like, you don't want to have like raw batter stuck to it, because if it comes out clean, that means it's done in the center. And if it comes out with still raw batter or like moist crumbs stuck to it, it might not be done yet. So usually it'll say in the recipe, ooh. Okay, so our pressure cooker has come to pressure. That's what that beep meant. So now it's going to cook for 11 minutes, and then it'll be done. So toothpick test. So in this particular case, we want the toothpick when it's cooked to come out completely clean, and that's how we'll know it's done. So I don't have an oven here, but this is what it looks like before it goes in the oven, and then because we're doing a cooking show, I have one already prepared. So this one I cooked in a square pan, but this is what, hopefully it'll look something like this when it's all done. So this took about 30 minutes in my home oven because it doesn't work very well. So everything takes longer. So that's why it's important to know the toothpick test, because oftentimes things will take longer in my oven than they say in the recipe. So that's why I always check that to make sure that I don't have something that's like not cooked all the way in the middle. So that's a good rule of thumb. And that is our cornbread. All right, so we've got our chili cooking, we've got our cornbread ready to put in the imaginary oven. And the next thing we are going to make is our mug cake. So mug cakes are pretty awesome because you can make a single serving, and then you don't have to worry about like eating all the cake or having the restraint not to eat the whole cake. It's also something that can be cooked in the microwave. So if you have older kids that can use the microwave, this might be a good technique for them to start baking, but not necessarily using the oven. And they're really quick and easy to make. And you can make multiple ones if you have multiple mugs. So the one that I picked today is banana bread mug cake. So if you like banana bread, you'll probably like this mug cake. And I feel like it's a little bit healthy because it has bananas in it. All right, so when you are making baked goods with bananas, you want your bananas to be super ripe. So if you're eating a banana plain, you probably like don't want it to be super brown on the outside, but that's perfect for baking. So if you have some bananas that have gone a little bit more brown than you like to eat in your cereal or whatever, baking with them is one of the options. You can also freeze bananas that are really ripe, and then you can use them in smoothies or you can use them later on in baked goods. So I really don't care for the texture of bananas, like just eating them plain is not really appealing to me, but I do like them in things and I like the taste of them. So usually if I get bananas, I'll just let them ripen on the counter until they're pretty dark brown, and then I'll slice them up and put them on a tray and freeze them, and then once they're frozen hard, then I'll put them in like a Ziploc bag in the freezer and then use them for smoothies or whatever. I've also used those frozen banana slices in this banana bread mug cake. I just kind of defrosted them in the microwave and drained off the extra liquid. So if you have some that you put in the freezer, you can use those too. You just want to get rid of some of that extra liquid. So these aren't quite as ripe as I would normally use. So if you can let them be a little bit riper, that's best, because the riper they are, the sweeter they are, because they develop those sugars. So this one I just bought the other day, so it's maybe not quite as ripe as I would normally use, but we'll have to work with what we have here. So we'll peel off all these scary banana strings. And this banana peel can go in your compost if you have curbside compost. And then this is another good task for kids. I'm going to use a fork and mash the banana. And if it's really ripe, like you want it to be, it's really easy to mash. So for this mug cake, for one serving, we want 1/3 of a cup of banana. So I think, let's try for this much and we'll see if that's about right. As I mentioned before, my glass measuring cup took a dive earlier, so we're just going to estimate again with our 1/2 cup measuring cup. And cooking is a good way to practice math with your kids. So if you have kids at home, you can talk about fractions, and that's a fun way to practice math, I think. All right, so I think this is about 1/3 of a cup of mashed banana. So I'll get our mug and we'll add in our banana. The next thing it calls for is 1 tablespoon of oil. So we've got our oil again. We'll add 1 tablespoon of oil. Next is 1 tablespoon of milk. And again, you can use any kind of milk that you have that you would use at home. So I've got soy milk here. 1 tablespoon of that. Those are our liquid ingredients. And I'm just going to wipe off my measuring spoon a little bit here. All right, and next we want 1 tablespoon of granulated sugar. And 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. So we've got our flour back here. A lot of ingredients in common between the cornbread and the mug cake. There's lots of recipes online for mug cake. So if you don't like bananas, or even if you do and want to try something different, just Google mug cake and you'll find lots of recipes. All right, now we want a pinch of salt. So I usually just use the little 1/4 cup or 1/4 teaspoon and just get like a little bit of salt. And then we want a pinch of ground cinnamon. So I've got my cinnamon over here. And I'll just do the same thing. So I'll fill up like just part of this 1/4 teaspoon and put that in there. And then we want a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. So again, this is our leavener. This will make it rise. So a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. If you want, you can add nuts or chocolate chips to this, but we're just going to use this, and I'm going to use this spoon to stir it for about 20 seconds or just until I make sure everything's completely mixed in. Because again, we don't want like a pocket of raw, unmixed baking powder because that tastes terrible and we don't want that. So I'm really getting into the bottom there, making sure I'm scraping out the bottom, getting everything stirred together. All right, well, it's really stuck in there, but so this is what it looks like. It's about halfway full of batter in this particular mug that I chose. And then next step is to microwave it. So the recipe says to microwave for 80 seconds. Your microwave might vary based on how powerful it is. So I've got the microwave here, and I'm going to, let's see if I can step around here. Actually, I'll turn it around, not dump this. And we'll microwave it for 80 seconds and see what it looks like. So you just put the whole mug in there with the batter inside, and then we'll wait 80 seconds and see how it looks. So we'll be able to determine if we think it's done or not based on how it looks after the 80 seconds have elapsed. So yeah, mug cake is pretty easy dessert. You can make it in just a few minutes, and then it just takes a little under 2 minutes to cook it. All right, so our chili is beeping. So the 11 minutes pressure cooking time has elapsed. And so now is the part we've all been waiting for. We're going to go ahead and unplug it. It's done cooking. And so with the pressure cooker, and I'm still learning how to use this thing, but there are 2 options that you'll see. You can either let the pressure naturally release, or you can manually release it. So we're gonna let it naturally release while we finish our mug cake, and then I'll show you how to release the rest of the pressure. All right. So that beeping means that our mug cake is finished. So be careful when you take it out, and I think this is just about right. So it'll look a little bit undercooked when you first look at the mug cake. So you can see like it has a tiny bit of like raw batter on the top, but the rest of it looks pretty cooked. So I think this is done, and then the other key is to let it sit for at least 3 minutes to cool, and it'll continue cooking as it cools. So we're going to let it sit for 3 minutes and then we'll look, and I think it's probably just right inside, but we'll kind of cut in there and see how it looks after 3 minutes have gone by. All right, so with the pressure cooker, this is kind of the most dangerous part. So I have a couple techniques for doing it. The pressure cooker, it builds up steam inside there. And so when you release the pressure, really hot steam comes out. So you don't want your hands or face or any body part to be anywhere near the steam. So the best way that I've figured out how to do that is make sure that it's somewhere so the steam's gonna like shoot straight up out of the top. So make sure that there's like it's clear above there. And then I wear an oven mitt, and then I also use the wooden spoon handle to give me a little extension arm. So right now it's locked on the pressure, and you can see this little, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little red button there, kind of like a turkey button, if you've ever done that. And we're going to release the pressure manually. So we're not going to let it naturally release any longer. We're going to let the rest of the pressure come out. So I'm going to use my spoon handle to just turn this to the steam, and you'll see the steam come out the top, and you can imagine why you don't want your skin near that really hot steam. So you have to wait until it's completely released all the steam and the little button has fallen back down. And that way we'll know that all the pressure has been released before we take off the lid. All right. I have a serving bowl here that I had ready. And while we're waiting, I'm just gonna look at our mug cake again. And I think it's just right. So it does have like that little tiny spot of batter, but I think the inside is cooked. I'm just gonna stick my banana mashing fork in there, and yeah, it's totally cooked perfectly on the inside. So dessert is ready, and that'll be good if you like banana bread stuff. I think you'll like this mug cake. And the steam has finished coming out. The button fell back down in there, so we know that the pressure has been released. And now for the moment we've all been waiting for, I'm gonna wear my oven mitt, and I'm just going to unlock the lid and take it off, and it's gonna have some water in there. So just don't have your valuable antique books underneath the lid when you take it off. And I'm just gonna set it down right here, and we'll check on our chili. And it looks pretty good. I'll maybe move it over here a little bit, and then I'll get my ladle and we'll put some in the bowl, and then you'll be able to see it a little bit better, I think. All right, and that is our chili. Guess I'll move this back over. So if you want, you can serve your chili over the top of rice, or you can serve it over the top of pasta. Macaroni is what my mom always made growing up, and that kind of stretches it a little bit further, so it lasts longer, or more people get some chili. You can put lots of different toppings on your chili depending on what you like. So you can put like cheese or sour cream if you eat those things, or you can put like diced avocado is good, or like crumbled tortilla chips are good. And then the leftovers of chili are usually even better than the first day. So if you have any leftover, you can eat them just plain or with your toppings or over the top of those other things. Or you can make things like you can make chili fries. So you can make roasted potatoes. So I found a way to make those a little faster. You can wash your potato, prick it with a fork, microwave it for like 2 minutes, so it's not like completely done, but it's partially cooked. And then after it cools down a little bit, you can slice it into wedges, and then you put those in the oven, tossed with a little olive oil and salt at 400 degrees or 425 degrees. And when they're brown on the outside, you have French fries. And you can put chili over the top to make chili fries, or you can put it over the pasta, like I said. So there's lots of different options with the leftover chili, or you can just put it over baked potato, or a baked sweet potato would also be good. You can always make like a big batch of chili, and then you have lots of options, and the leftovers taste good. So hopefully your family eats leftovers. I know some people are not big on leftovers, but chili leftovers are good. All right, and I know I have 3 sisters, and they all have kids under the age of 5, and I asked them if their kids would eat chili because I wanted to have like a picky eater kid approved recipe, and they gave me all different answers, like, well, they'll eat it if it's over macaroni, but not just plain, or they'll eat it if it has cheese on top. So you can figure out what works for your family. But I know this is a favorite for my family, and I know we ate it growing up. So hopefully your family likes chili in one of the variations that we've talked about here. All right, so we've got our chili, we've got our banana bread mug cake, we've got our cornbread over there. So those were our 3 recipes. And before we get to our question and answer portion, I'm just going to talk a little bit. So hopefully most of you got the kit. If you didn't, that's okay, and you don't need it. I emailed the recipes to you, so if you want to make any of these recipes at home, you have the recipes. In the kit, I got a lot of those goodies from the city of Beaverton. Has a recycling and sustainability department. So if you got the kit, you got some reusable bags. So if you can remember to take those into the store with you instead of getting a plastic or a paper bag, then you can reuse those over and over again. And there was one in there that like folds into itself in a little pocket, so it's like this big, so you can keep it in your purse. I really love reusable bags. We use them for everything. There's also in there a reusable produce bag. So instead of getting those flimsy plastic bags at the store, you can get your produce and put it in these reusable produce bags. So I use these all the time. I've never had any problems using these. And they do sell them at the stores too, so they can't really say you can't use those. And they're nice because you can see through the mesh, so you don't have to like take stuff out. Although sometimes they do take it out to scan the barcode on there, but you can see the code through the mesh. So these are really nice. I've been using these for a couple of years now, and they're really great. So if you can remember your produce bags and your reusable grocery bags, those are good. And then as far as recycling, if you have curbside recycling, you can put your cans in there, or if you live in an apartment complex like I do, hopefully you have recycling. These can go in there. Just make sure that you either like don't take the lid off all the way and just kind of push it inside there, so it doesn't, we protect the people who are sorting all that recycling. Or if you take off the lid completely, you can put it in all the lids inside a can and just kind of crimp the top shut. So that way, you know, people who are sorting at the facility, when it gets sent there, don't cut themselves, because we definitely don't want that. And then, like I said, you can compost your vegetable scraps, or you can use it to make vegetable broth. And also in your Also in your bag that you got, there's this thing talking about leftovers. So it's really great if you can eat all your leftovers and prevent food waste, because a lot of food in our landfills really builds up and creates a lot of methane gas and climate change, all that. So this, if you're wondering what these things were, this is a magnet for your fridge, and you can write down what leftovers are on there and the date, and then you'll hopefully remember that they're in there before they go bad. So that's what this little thing is, like a dry erase marker, and you can write on this magnet here. And there is also a magnet in there talking about storing your produce and the best way to do that and how long it lasts. So that's what those things were, and hopefully you are recycling and composting at home if you're able to do that. There's a couple websites that are really great if you have questions about what you can recycle and what you can't, because it's super confusing. There's a website called Recycle or Not that you can go to and see examples of what you can and can't recycle. So recycleornot.org is the website, and you can see what you can and can't recycle. It's really great because there are some things that I didn't realize, and I realized I was doing it wrong. There's also this eatsmartwasteless.com, and you can take a challenge to prevent food waste, and so that's why you got that magnet and all that. So if you want to check those out, those are good ways to know about recycling and composting and all that good stuff. All right, so that is the end of our cooking show. We have about 8 minutes left, so if anybody has questions about anything that I did here today, I will try my best to answer them. And so I am going to go ahead, and if you have questions, you can either type them into the chat, and my co-host can relay the questions to me, or you can, we'll allow you to unmute yourselves. And then if you want, you can unmute yourself and ask a question as well. So.
Okay. Hey, Miss Bethany, we do a couple things in the chat.
Okay, great.
I just want to say thank you so much. Said thank you for compiling that amazing goodie bag. We do have one question. It is, I'll just read it. It is, I am enjoying this class. Will this family cooking program continue monthly into the future?
Ooh, good question. Oh, so the question was, will this cooking class continue monthly into the future? So that's a great question, and the answer is, I don't know. So at the library, we all kind of come up with our own program ideas and then do the planning for those, and we usually plan them out a few months ahead of time. So I don't have anything planned for December, but there was a lot of interest in this class, so I would like to do it again. It was really fun. So I am hoping to plan one for the future, but it probably will be next year before that comes up, just because of our planning process is so far in advance. So I'm hoping to do this again. If you have any suggestions of things you'd like to see me cook, or at least try, you can send me an email to the email where you got this Zoom link, and let me know if there's anything you want to see. So hopefully, but I can't say for sure if we'll do this again in the future.
Okay, Miss Bethany, I do have one additional question so far. I think Mira, I believe you have your hand up. If you'd like to answer your question, you're welcome to.
Yes, I apologize for missing most of this. I had another commitment. I have a quick question. You possibly answered it, but again, I got here late. Okay. On the chili recipe, it doesn't say when to put the 2 cloves of minced garlic in. When does that go into the recipe?
Oh, yeah. So the question is when to put the garlic into the chili. So I kind of put it in after the carrots and onions had been sauteing for a little while, because garlic tends to cook a little faster than those two things. So I usually cook it or put it in the last minute or so before I add the spices and the other ingredients. So that way it doesn't get away from me and burn, because you don't want burnt garlic. So I'll put it in with the sauteing onions and carrots, but not until after they've been sauteing for a little while and they are mostly cooked.
Thank you very much. I appreciate.
You're
I
welcome.
didn't want to assume. And I want to make this recipe. Thanks.
Okay, excellent.
Do you know where we'll be able to, I see it's being recorded, yippee, because I want to see it in its entirety. Do you know where I'll go to see it? The
Yes,
library website or
I
what?
will put it up on the Beaverton City Library YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube, you can search for Beaverton City Library. We have a ton of videos up there now. We've been making a lot of videos in the past year and a half. And so it will go up there eventually. We have to close caption it, so that takes some time, but it will go up there at some point in the next month, and then you'll be able to watch it on there.
Yippee, thank you.
You're welcome.
Wrap it up.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming to the family cooking class with Beaverton City Library. It was good to see you all, and I hope to see you at the library, and you can watch this on YouTube later on if you'd like to revisit it. I hope you like the recipes. All right. Thanks so much for coming, everybody. Have a good night.